So, as we get closer and closer to Election Day on November 5th, one of the things that I and pretty much everyone else has been noticing is how close the polls are, how close they seem to be. But more importantly, the media narrative that keeps it that way, right? Because if you think back to 2016, the polls weren't right for Hillary Clinton. And then you look at why she lost, and then you had the secret Trump vote, that hidden silent Trump vote. Then you had the fact that Hillary Clinton just is a historically unpopular candidate, on top of the fact that she just doesn't campaign very well. She didn't hit key states during crunch time. And before she lost to Donald Trump, she lost to Barack Obama, who nobody had ever heard of really at the time. A black man no one had ever heard of beating a Clinton. So that really says a lot about her ability to campaign not being very strong, right? Then in 2020, you had the polls still undercounting that silent Trump vote. But then you fast forward, right? Then you get to 2022 when Roe was reversed. Well, now you got the polls undercounting Democratic support. Now you got polls undercounting women's support. You got polls not including key demographics. Then you look at the polls now, right? And you're seeing how basically newly registered voters aren't counted. And then how do they go about these polling? Like calling landlines, calling people's cell phones. I personally have been called, I don't know how many times by polling companies, and I've never answered the phone. I just hear the message and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I move on with my life. So somebody really needs to figure this out in terms of how to more accurately give us polling information, because you look at the early voting data and Democrats are beating Republicans 2-1. People are outvoting even the pandemic era. Like 20 million people have already voted early, and there's still plenty of time left for early voting. On top of that, again, it's just becoming to where you see that the media wants to keep a narrative, because if you don't feel like the election is super close, then you're not going to tune in. So they just sell fear and sell anxiety. So let's check this out. I'll give you a good example. Nate Silver, his gut prediction, these are all over the headlines. Nate Silver's gut prediction is that Trump's going to win. But then when you actually dig into the article, you see that he says, well, I could be wrong. Don't put too much stock into this. You shouldn't trust anyone's gut. Oh, and also the margin of error in the polls could go either way. So Trump could be ahead or Kamala could be more ahead. We just don't know. We'll have to wait and see, right? So again, any narrative to keep people anxious is really how the media works. Now, I'm not saying that the election can't go either way. It's all about turnout. But still, when you really dig down, the polls just aren't accurate. So let's see what Nate Silver has to say. Silver wrote in the New York Times today, whose predictions have followed political course for over a decade, revealing what his instincts tell him about this year's race. After explaining the unsatisfying numbers forecast that Vice President Kamala Harris and Trump are polling within a percentage point, he delivered the take people press him on. What's your gut? What's your gut say? So, okay, I'll tell you, Silver wrote. My gut says Donald Trump. And my guess is that it is true for many anxious Democrats. So many anxious Democrats purportedly feel the same. His gut prediction, however, came with a warning, but I don't think you should put any value whatsoever on anyone's gut, including mine. He continued, instead, you should resign yourself to the fact that a 50-50 forecast really does mean 50-50, and you should be open to the possibility that those forecasts are wrong, and that could be the case equally in the direction of Mr. Trump or Ms. Harris. So basically, again, you see, they may, this headline is on multiple websites today. Nate Silver's gut prediction, but then the actual article says, I don't know. Because really what Nate Silver's saying is he has no clue who's going to win the election. He just, maybe his gut feeling goes with Trump because maybe that's who he'd like to win. Or maybe that's just what his gut feeling is. But he did point out that you really shouldn't take that to heart. Silver then detailed how his caution in making a call stems from the race within margins in the 7 battleground states, where polling suggests the race is too close to call. 50-50 is the only responsible forecast. He pointed out that polls have been wrong in both directions before. It could be equally wrong for Mr. Trump or Miss Harris. So again, you see what I'm saying? Like the articles will be like, oh, the Democrats are worried. Which, of course, you're going to be worried. You're going to be anxious. You're going to have nerves because the election's in a few days now. So, of course, you will. But then when you dig deep, like the headline will be, the Democrats fear they're going to lose. But then when you dig into the article, it's not quite that. You know what I mean? So here, we'll check this out as well. In terms of the polling issues. So this is what some people have to say. Donald Trump's recent momentum shift could in fact be an illusion, according to some experts. Trump has recently overtaken Vice President Kamala Harris in certain states' polling averages, but the data also include a huge number of GOP-leaning polls that could potentially tip the scales. The mainstream media outlets suggest that they have accounted for the GOP polls, but some pollsters aren't so sure, according to the New Republic's new reporting. TNR used the recent example of Trump overtaking Harris in North Carolina and a GOP firm known as Qantas taking credit for it to illustrate what the author said could be a problem. Quote, to proponents of what might be called the red wave theory of polling, this was a blatant example of a phenomenon that they see as widespread. A flood of GOP aligned polls has been released for the precise purpose of influencing the polling averages. And thus, the election forecast in Trump's favor, the report states. In the view of these critics, the Qantas example, the firm subsequently denied any such intent, only made all this more overt. Dozens of such polls have been released since then, and they are in no small part responsible for tipping the averages and the forecast towards Trump. So this happened in 2022 where there was supposed to be a red wave, but there was no red wave because women was pissed off. Women were pissed off that their fundamental rights had been taken away. In 20 Republican states, not only just the reversal of Roe, no more federal protections, but 20 Republican states basically have near abortion bans or basically total abortion bans at 6 weeks. That's why the Democrats have been undercounted. So at the end of the day, what really matters more than anything is the get out the vote effort, which the Democrats appear to have a much stronger get out the vote effort in this election. Donald Trump, he's kind of a has been at this point. He's old news. And from what I can gather, if the Democrats continue to get the vote out, they're going to win. This is going to be a very, very high turnout election. And once again, this is going to be yet another election where the polls just were not correct. Hey now, thank you so much for tuning in here at Politics and Paper. If you like what I do and you support my work, go ahead and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it and it really helps to support what we do here.